weathering the storm to come in. It looked like it was going to be a little treacherous, but we made it, and everything's going to be good. It's going to be hot. So we are talking about a wonderful topic today. We are talking about staying in the zone, the whole body approach to the endurance athlete. And this is an interesting topic because a lot of people in this room probably have done some serious training for long distance events. We don't really talk about it much in the community. When you see it on television, there is a couple of things on ESPN once in a while, but there's more coverage on, football, basketball, baseball. But these individuals that do these types of sports are remarkable. It's just unbelievable, the training and effort they have to put into their lives in order to complete such a task. I will be reading some interesting quotes. I think that'll be fun to do before we start. Also, I do want to thank, and if you guys could help me with a round of applause, the executive team that put this together. Crosby, Bugenhagen, and Kristen Borowski, just fantastic. They did a great job putting this thing together. Of course, I'm always happy to talk about where they train and how they do, and I don't know if you guys know Crosby very well, but she does remarkable things. Like last year, I spoke how there was this individual that was in need on the highway or on a country road, and she said, this person's in need, I'm going to pull over and go over there and help, and she did that without even blinking an eye. And to have the training and the background she has, she did her BS at UW Milwaukee, and then of course she did her master's at the University of Louisville, and I kind of did it pretty good. That's not bad, almost like I'm from there, right? And Kristen, of course, is going to UW Green Bay, which is fantastic. So I just can't say enough of how awesome it was for Dr. Peifel, Eric Peifel, and I, who, of course, Dr. Peifel's medical school was at the Medical College of Ohio, residency was at the Medical College of Wisconsin, and then, of course, he went back to the wonderful Buckeye State and went to The Ohio State University and got a sports medicine fellowship there. So what a wonderful, wonderful thing. So please help me with a round of applause for both those two individuals. Dr. Peifel and I can't say enough of how awesome that is for what you guys do for this. The person that I have the honor to introduce has been I would say a friend, really, a patient and a friend. And so I've known her for several years. The dedication that she puts towards the efforts of being an athlete, being a physical therapist, being a friend, being a co-worker, you name it, she really puts all that effort into it. And it's just wonderful to have that person in my life, and I'm sure others in this room say the same thing. There is a wonderful thing, a piece that was put together that really, I think, does a great job describing our keynote speaker, who is Lauren Jensen McGinnis. It's really quite a wonderful piece, and I thought I would take the time to read it and let you guys see a little bit and hear a little bit more of really what Lauren's all about. So let me take a second here, and excuse me, as I get older in life, my eyes get older in life, and I can't accommodate through context, so I use these wonderful readers. So Lauren Jensen McGinnis is a professional triathlon coach from Muskego, Wisconsin. She combines her knowledge as a physical therapist with over 30 years of coaching experience, making her one of the premier certified UST coaches in the country. As the owner and head coach of TriFaster, Coach Lauren leads workouts and clinics throughout southeastern Wisconsin and the Chicagoland area, and she provides online coaching to athletes throughout the world. Lauren is a caring and compassionate coach who loves the sport of triathlon. She makes it her mission to help athletes achieve goals beyond what they initially feel is possible. With her physical therapy training, Lauren coaches from a unique point of reference, allowing her to quickly identify an athlete's abilities and create a plan to ensure their success. Coach Lauren leads by example. She has completed in over 400 triathlons since 1985, which is a feat in itself. Fantastic. Yeah, rightfully so. Learning many lessons that make her such an effective coach. She has coached over 3,000 multi-sport athletes from beginners through professional athletes since 1993 and has instructed countless swimmers since 1985. Her style is to share in the adventure with the athletes that she coaches, acting as a true partner in their fitness and training journey. Having come back from a devastating accident in 2010 where she lost her friend and training partner, Lauren has mastered what it takes to overcome adversity and excel despite setbacks. This coaching mindset is the foundation behind her success in leading over 250 cancer survivors to the start and finish line of their first triathlon. Fantastic. Just fantastic. As well as assisting numerous athletes in rebuilding themselves after setbacks, including injury, medical challenges, and other adversities. There is also the optimistic attitude that Lauren adopted as she self-coached herself to winning the World Championship title at the 2018 ITU Age Group Sprint Triathlon World Championship only 9 months after having surgery. Just great. Whether you are just beginning your fitness journey or you're an experienced competitor, Coach Lauren can help you. She has an unmatched ability accurately assessing your current fitness level, identifying your strengths and limiters, and providing the guidance you need to achieve your goals. As a physical therapist and movement specialist, Coach Lauren uses her unique experience and expertise to assist you in ways far beyond what other triathlon coaches can offer, and I believe that to be very true. Very, very true. I wanted to mention a few of her accolades, which is quite many. With a lot of world championships. She has 2. The one I just mentioned, which was in Australia, and the other one 2015 in Chicago, same event. And then national championships, she 2018 US AT Overall Female International Aquabike National Championship. 2018 US AT Age Group Aquathon National Champion. 2016 and 17 US AT Sprint Triathlon Age Group National Champion. 2004, 2003 the US AT Pro Elite Overall Female Long Course and Duathlon National Champion. It just goes on. Just doing everything that you do and be able to win and be a champion in all those events just speaks towards your character. So, without further ado, and please, with just an amazing applause, could you guys welcome me to the stage, Lauren? She's fantastic, my friend, and hope to have many more laughs with her. So, thank you, guys.
Well, thank you, everyone. I'm truly honored and humbled to be here. And as you hear my story, you'll realize that I've interacted with many of you in this room to help me achieve all of these different things Dr. Edwards just discussed, including Dr. Edwards. As Dr. Edwards said, as I talk today, I'm going to come from the perspective as a professional coach, a physical therapist, and a longtime athlete. I'm going to talk about how to build a partnership with your athletes. So I have no disclosures, and I'm basically going to talk mainly by telling my story and tell you how, and give you some ideas on how to better partner with your athletes, and talk about some strategies to do that. I love this story and this picture of my brothers and I in our Sunday best. My story begins with, as you can see, having 3 brothers. And when you have 3 brothers, there's no way you don't come out a little bit competitive. And I have always loved competing. We grew up the way kids used to grow up, where we played outside every day, and football, baseball, we played football in the street, Red Rover, all the things you're not allowed to do anymore. But we competed. And I think I can only remember 2 contests I ever lost on purpose. One, we took a vacation to St. Louis, Tantera Resort, and they had this ugly man contest in which you were in your swimsuit and you dressed up, and you had to like paint yourself black and go and make ugly faces. And I was very happy to lose that contest to my brother Mike. I did get 2nd place, but the other contest I remember losing, and is this volume okay? It's hard for me to hear myself. Okay. I have the gift of gab, and my aunt and uncle were watching us for the weekend, and I think they were just sick of hearing us talk. So my aunt says, I have an idea. Let's have a silence contest. And I swear, no more than 3 seconds went by, and I thought, I don't want to be silent. So I exclaimed, I lose, and I continued talking. But other than that, I've always been a competitor, and I've always tried to give my best and to be the best I can be. And I actually have always enjoyed winning thanks to my brothers. So here's an early picture of me on swim team. Now, I was really little. Believe it or not, I was about 10 in that picture. When I was in 5th grade, I weighed 57 pounds. I was a teeny little thing. In fact, in kindergarten, I had an October birthday, and back then you could go to kindergarten, I think I was 4. And I was really little. And so the first day we're walking to kindergarten, my aunt's trailing behind us, watching us walk by ourselves, because that's what kids got to do back then. And the crossing guard thought I was kind of cute because I was so little, and she picked me up to carry me across the street. And I very indignantly kicked her and said, put me down, I'm not a baby. So I was a feisty little 4-year-old, but I was little, and I trained really hard. So I was actually not a natural athlete. My neighbor, who was a running coach, said, you're the most unnatural runner I've ever seen. A little unkind, but it was true. And as a swimmer, I got the hardest worker trophy, not 1 year, not 2 years, but 3 years in a row. You know who they give that to? The kid who works their tail off, it kind of stinks. So, but it paid off later in life, the hard work. So now, I don't know if you can see this, but I want to note, can you see like the dirt on my knees there? And the kind of like risky behavior that I was really a rambunctious child. And it's probably like I needed them washed back then, because I was always like doing things, and I was really pretty active. And honestly, that's probably how I ended up on swim team when I was 6, because nowadays they give kids Ritalin, but in my days they gave kids swim team. So my parents were like, wow, you have way too much energy, you're a swimmer. So I had an early beginning in the sport. Did my first triathlon in 1985, and did my first elite pro race in 1993, and was able to actually enjoy 17 years as a professional triathlete. That accident, which I'll talk about a little later in my talk, in 2010 was a very abrupt ending to my career as a professional triathlete. So now I'm going to transition, and that's a pun for triathletes, right, to talking about different types of multi-sport distances, or actually disciplines. And the reason I want to talk about this is because you probably all know, if you work with endurance athletes, that, well, let me ask you this. Who thinks endurance athletes are type A? Wrong. They're type A+++, right? So, and they get really sad when they can't do what they love. But there's options, and there's things you can morph to. So triathlon is the first thing up there, and that's swimming, biking, and running. Okay, the next thing on there is duathlon, which is biking and running. So if you have an athlete who, let's say, their shoulder is, or their collarbone, or whatever it is so destroyed that swimming really isn't healthy for their body anymore, maybe you can help them explore. There's this thing out there called duathlon that you can switch to. Aquathon is swimming and running. So for those who maybe want to do something that's not very time intensive, those are usually a 1,000-meter swim and a 5K run, which is something very doable that a busy professional can do on 3 days of training a week, and not completely destroy their body, but still be able to have their competitive, urges met. So underneath it is Aquabike. And this one involves no running. So we all know athletes that, again, maybe running isn't the healthy thing for their body anymore. And I personally am very limited in how much I can run now. And so I've been exploring Aquabike, and it's actually a lot of fun. And actually, you get to be first in the food line when you do Aquabike, because you go swim, bike, and then you're done. And while everyone's off running in the heat, you're eating food. It's great. Off-road is actually a way to probably get more people into your doors to treat, because that's triathlon, but on trails, and I do think there's a lot of crashes in that. So I wouldn't necessarily send an athlete to off-road to, prevent injury, but it's an option. And then winter, everything's done in the snow. So that's usually snowshoeing, skiing, and biking all in the snow, although there's other versions of the winter tri too. So distances. Most people, when they say triathlon, they automatically think of the granddaddy of the sport, which is the Hawaii Ironman, or actually there's been a proliferation of Ironmans. There's one in Madison. I think it's on about its 12th year. So I'll start at the bottom. Ironman is a 2.4-mile swim, 112-mile bike, and then a marathon run. And anytime you're doing anything where you're like, I do this, and then I do that, oh, and then I run a marathon, it's a little insane. And there's actually a few crazies out there, and I'll call them crazies, because I'm actually cured from Ironman now. I just do the really short ones. They do these things like double Ironmans, and I'm like, okay, I'm okay if I miss lunch, but if I have to miss sleep to do something, forget about it. Half Ironman is half that distance. Olympic, which is, I'm working backwards up the slide, is when the sport first started in the early 80s, there was Ironman, and then almost all the other events were the Olympic distance. So that's a mile swim, 40-kilometer or 24.8-mile bike, and then a 10K or 6.2-mile run. So that's a very common distance still to this day. And then initially the sprints were half that distance, but now you see pretty much if a local venue puts on a sprint, they're going to kind of use the terrain they have around them. So you'll see a great variety, anything from a quarter-mile to a half-mile swim, a 10 to 18-mile bike, and a 2 to 4-mile run is really the sprint. And really that's all I've done since my knee surgery a year and a half ago in terms of tries. I've done some aquabike and aquathon too. So I guess I put this slide up here too because you're going to get maybe marathoners that running, they shouldn't run all those miles anymore for whatever reason. Maybe you can say, hey, maybe take your competitive instincts more towards cross training and maybe only run 2 or 3 days a week and get your fitness that way. Or if they're into the mega distance stuff, which is not sustainable as a lifestyle forever, doing that long stuff, you can help them find a path to making their competitive drive another way, doing shorter stuff. Because I tell you, the race is as hard as you make it. And I used to do Ironmans in around 10 hours. It's a long day, it's hard. But now I do hour-long races, and I feel just as satisfied. And I worked differently, but I feel like I worked just as hard at the end of the day. All right, so I want to talk just a little bit about my career as a professional triathlete. So I actually was able to race at an elite level for 17 years, which to my knowledge is the second longest career in the country behind Karen Smyers, who's just amazing. She's won Kona, she's won Pro World. She coached me for 2 years, actually. I learned a lot from Karen. But I think the reason I had so much longevity was because I never did it full time. So I was a professional triathlete when I worked full time. Actually, when I went to physical therapy school, I was a professional triathlete. And on average, I think I was training 7 hours a week, and my peak week during PT school was 9 hours a week, which I know a lot of orthopedic people in this room would go, wow, that's a lot of, but actually for the level I was racing at, it was at the extremely low end. And the reason I was able to do it was I always did quality over quantity. I didn't waste a minute. And you all, everyone in this room has some kind of medical degree, and you know how hard that is, and especially to sit for 8 hours a day in those classrooms sometimes. For me, that was challenging. It felt so good to have a little break at the end of the long day of PT school to go do something physical and then come back and then, of course, study. So I just want to point out here, and I don't think you can see it very well, but my nickname is the Shark. So this is one version. I've always had a lot of fun in the sport. And so one of my little trademark things is I hand make these shark fins. Don't ask me why. It's a persona thing. It's just kind of fun because when you're taking a duct tape shark fin and putting it on the top of your helmet at the beginning of a race, no matter what happens that day, I'm kind of reminded to have fun. I particularly like this version of my shark helmet because it had the googly eyes. So, you know, it was kind of fun to show up at a race and like have my little googly eye shark helmet and be like, you know, hey, this is fun, and all these super anal retentive professional triathletes that don't even want to talk to you, you know. And then I'd go kick their ass. It was really kind of fun. So. All right, so one of the highlights of my career as a professional triathlete is, yes, believe it or not, a lot of people who are on the Olympic path are actually professionals, not age group amateurs, you know. But in the year 2000, it was the first year that triathlon was in the Olympics. I did not go to the Olympics, but I had the honor of going to the Olympic trials. And the way you went to the Olympic trials was they had all these World Cup races around the world, and they had a 2-year period which you could gain World Cup points. Well, 9 months, I like to do things, I like to do just-in-time fitness. I don't like to spend, I really like to be efficient, so I didn't want to spend like 2 years. I got a bug in my butt like 9 months before Olympic trials and thought, you know, I want to qualify for this thing. So I started going to all these World Cups and gaining the points. And the standard was you had to be in the top 125 in the world rankings to get to go to Olympic trials. Well, back in 2000, it's a little different now. The United States and Australia really were the two dominant countries in the sport. So when it came down to it, out of in the top 125, when the rankings came out to know who went to trials, there were 26 U.S. females that made the cut, and I was one of them. Although, let's see. Here's my bib. I was ranked 24th, so I was ranked pretty low. I just like got in by the skin of my teeth in there. And that's a couple pictures from, I don't have very many pictures from the day, but that was on the run. It was 100 degrees in Dallas, Texas. It was quite the day. But because I knew I wasn't going to the Olympics, I was like, hooray, I'm here, this is the party, the trials are the party. I actually really exceeded myself that day, and I ended up 12th. And it was really interesting because I beat women that I hadn't beat in the whole process of qualifying, because I think when they realized they weren't going to be in the top 3 and they weren't going to make it to the Olympics, they kind of gave up. And so I was able to pass them. So that definitely stands out as that, and then the Australia race I'm about to talk about in a few minutes stands out as just one of my top memories in the sport. So that would have been in 2000. In 2001, I had my son David, so I am on the 17-and-a-half-year maternity leave as a physical therapist. I haven't come back to it yet. I've just really done more and more coaching. So here's after he was born, and this does happen a lot to women who exercise during their pregnancy. Now I know that what happens, sorry, I didn't make myself clear. They actually perform better in the 2 and 3 years after they have a child. And when I was pregnant, I knew like 2 weeks after I was pregnant, I knew I was pregnant. I was swimming in the pool and I was like, wow, I'm seasick. Went to Walgreens, yep, I'm pregnant. So I know, because I'm so competitive, that I was like, okay, this is a year off. I know people that trained and raced pregnant, and that was their choice, but I was like, I'm way too competitive. I'm not gonna, you know, build a good, I'm just gonna put this baby at risk. So that was a year I exercised, but I didn't train, and I didn't let my heart rate go above whatever my OBGYN said. But I did then, after I was done nursing, get back to competing, and that's my son there. That's Madison Ironman. He's about to turn, that's a little bit before his 4th birthday. And I did have, I think, my best professional racing years in the 2 to 4 years after he was born, once I got back in shape. That's when I won the 2 pro national championships. And I got invited by Ironman to do various races, a lot of times in Madison, 5 there. I did 11 total Ironmans, but I'm cured from that now. But this was, I was finishing 2nd at Ironman Wisconsin, and I got in trouble for this, actually, from the pro committee, but I didn't care, because I got my kid near the finish line, and I ran over the finish line with him, and that's probably my favorite racing picture, is coming over the line with David. So things were on a high, I was feeling good, until this happened. So this was the accident 3 weeks after I had done Ironman Wisconsin in 2010. I went out for a ride with my friend Jeff Lippman, and some of you may know him, and some of you may have heard of this accident because it was really publicized. It was all over the news. In fact, unfortunately, my son knew about it at school before I was even able to pick him up that day. So we were riding out on a country road. I was actually riding in the shoulder, and oops, sorry. Well, you can see what's coming. I just want you to see, that's where the car was. He was also in the shoulder. So I am on my second life. I'm extremely lucky to be alive. And not to be super morbid, but you can see Jeff was the unlucky one. You can see where he hit the windshield up on the car. I mean, when I pulled up these pictures and put this together, I just had to take a breath. Jeff went flight for life. He was on life support for 3 days and unfortunately did not live. He lives on in others. He was an organ donor. This is the power. Here's a picture of me talking. This is way before I knew I was injured. You know, the power of adrenaline and shock, right? So I'm walking around. I call 911, Flight for Life. I'm, talking to them. And then probably about 25 minutes went by and I went, oh, I can't lift my arm. Damn, I think I broke my collarbone. And so now I'm talking to the paramedics. I've been walking around for 25 minutes, and all of a sudden I just kind of go to one of the paramedics and go, I think I broke my collarbone. They bring out the backboard, they take me down, it's like I've been walking around for 25 minutes. So I had multiple injuries from that accident, and I didn't realize that day was the end of my professional triathlon career. I tried and tried, moving on, I was lucky enough to get in and see these two amazing doctors through the mosh. And first of all, the most obvious injury was and I would say I pulverized my collarbone. So from the ballistics and where my bike was, they said that I flew 25 feet and then I bounced another 10. So here's where I was lucky. My body never hit the car. What happened was the tapered part of the car hit my back wheel and catapulted me. So I'm alive today because I didn't hit the car, I just hit the ground. So I went in, saw Dr. Pennington pretty quickly. I knew I had broken my collarbone, but it was pretty significant. And this went on for 21 weeks. It was non-union, and this is how it would go. I'll show you how it went. I'd go see Dr. Pennington, and he and his PAs would very nicely be like, oh, no change. And then I would exclaim, fire truck, minus a few letters. And then I was kind of mortified that I dropped an F-bomb in the doctor's office. But lo and behold, I'd go back a month later, and he'd be like, no change. And I'd be like, big fire truck. I think I dropped an F-bomb every time I was in his office. It's kind of embarrassing, but it was very emotional, So at 20, when it's going on, he said, well, the standard of care is 26 weeks non-union. That's when we can repair you. Well, at 21 weeks, I was up in my office, and I put my arm down on a desk, and I kind of weight shifted forward, and I could just feel those bones move. And I'm like, I cannot take this. So I was that patient. So Dr. Pennington's not here. Is he here? No? Okay, well then I'll tell you this. So I was that patient. I still had his cell phone number from the first time I saw him. I called him up. I said, Dr. Pennington. I was Lauren Jensen at the time. This is Lauren Jensen. And I swear there was a 15-second pause. Yes? How can I help you? And I said, I cannot take it anymore. I said, I need that surgery. I want it now. I'm begging him for surgery. He says, all right, so you found me out golfing in Florida. So I will be back in the office tomorrow, and I'll put you on Friday. And I did a happy dance. I was probably the happiest person ever who was yay, I'm getting the surgery. But it was a little more complicated than that. Even after the surgery, so when they went in there, what they found was we thought we had a centimeter gap, that I had a centimeter gap. Well, what we couldn't tell was when he went in there was probably another centimeter and a half that was actually bone that was pulverized to dust. So it looked like it was bone, but I was actually missing like a good inch of my collarbone, and then the one end of the bone died. So even after the surgery, now it was stable, but it took forever to heal. I went to a bone endocrinologist, and in the end, I discovered I was actually vitamin D deficient, and then once I started on a really high dose of vitamin D, boom, it healed in about a month. So through this, I also saw Dr. Edwards. So we see this all the time in the clinic, right? Like someone has an injury, but it's kind of like unpeeling an onion, right? So you take off the first few layers, and then they get some function back, and they start to do things, and then they realize, oh, this is really bad too. So I had a lot of thoracic outlet from the collarbone, and I think it took a little while to realize I actually had also herniated C5 through C7. I saw Dr. Edwards for that. And actually, I thought the collarbone was the worst injury, but I think the thing that plagues me the most to today is I actually tore my left sacroiliac joint wide open. There was like a centimeter gap in it. And so that's something I've really had to manage. So I still use a cervical traction unit when the neck gets cranky, and I found a way to make my own SI belt out of Leukotape so I can go run. So every time I run, I manage it that way. And there's just things, my life is forever different, but I'm happy to be alive, and I'm really grateful for these two docs for putting me back together. So now, these are pictures of me. Now I'm like, well, by the way, now I'm almost 52. So my career as a pro triathlete, that was kind of the grandma on the circuit to begin with. So my days were numbered anyway, but I did have that abrupt end. And after a really probably 2-year rehab process, I started really getting fit again. So here's some pictures of just like, I just wanted to like see, I mean, that's my right arm, my collarbone on the left, but I'm anchoring off my left arm there. And this is Masters Swimming Nationals. I'm swimming the mile in that picture. But you can see that my collarbone doesn't restrict me at all. In fact, just to prove it to myself at that Masters Nationals, I did the 200 butterfly, which is like a crazy stupid event. You know what that is? That's like 4 lengths of this, and I could do it with my collarbone. So that's not restricted at all. And then this is just getting back to age group racing. That actually is one of the that was me finishing at one of the national, as a national champion a couple years ago. Let me catch up on my notes here. All right, oops, I skipped one. I just want to show you this. This is me practicing what I preach. I'm being launched into an ice bath here. So, by the race director, I thought that was kind of fun. And clearly, I have no fun at all doing this sport, right? So, there's a whole series of pictures. They're hilarious. I think it ends up in a belly flop at the end. Okay, so this is Team TriFaster, and actually, this is a team that we're lucky to be sponsored by the Midwest Orthopedic Specialty Hospital. And one of the biggest perks is when poop happens, we're lucky that we can get into the best stocks really pretty rapidly. So this is the team that went to nationals. I believe this is in 2017. And that is the event that I qualified for World Championships in Australia at. And right there, well, you'll see him in another picture. That's my husband, Dan. And I was like, oh, I've always wanted to go to Australia. That's on my bucket list. If I qualify, he goes, what do you mean if you qualify? When you qualify, we're going. So even before that race happened, I thought, I just would really love to go to Worlds in Australia because it would be so fun to represent Team USA there. So there's our team. And I got a little ahead of myself on the slide, but so that was in August of 2017. I qualified for World Championships. I had 13 months to train for it, and backing up, I know Dr. Edwards said that I had also done the Age Group World Championships in Chicago in 2015, and I had a really good race there. I got the silver medal. Well, you know how athletes think, right? So I'm like, okay, I did one Worlds, got the silver medal. There's only one thing left to do, right? So I decided that if I'm going to go to Australia, I'm going to do everything in my power to try to win. And you can't control your competition. You can only control yourself. But I was going to prepare in a way that put me in a position to be a contender to win. It was my goal, and I wasn't shy about it. It wasn't like I walked around at the supermarket, hey, I want to win worlds. But like to the people close to me, I was open with my goal, and I trained very specifically that was my goal in mind. So after Nationals in 2017, I took a break, and I was just starting to gear up my training, and things were going really well until they weren't. What happened was in November of 2017, I was getting ready to coach a cycling class. So I'm standing in my bike shoes in those cleats, and I have really big cleats, so my toes were raised up. Someone behind me said something. I did a quick pivot twist on a planted foot, and I tore my meniscus. And because I don't do anything halfway, I did an A+ job tearing it. So it was to the point I would just walk, it would buckle, and I was like, okay. Actually, when it happened, the moment it happened, I said to my class, I don't know what just happened, but it's not good. And then within a few hours, I was like, oh, I tore my meniscus, dang it. So I got in. Well, I actually went through all the steps. I went to physical therapy for 6 or 7 weeks, and but I pretty much knew where this was headed. So went in, saw Dr. Peifel, and I really appreciated his candor because he did really outline all the conservative and surgical options. But then he looked at me and he said, I just know you, and you love this active lifestyle, and you are not going to be happy if you don't have the surgery. So I opted to have the partial meniscectomy. That was at the end of December of 2018. And Dr. Peifel gave me very clear directions on what I needed to do. So even the day of the surgery, he's like, do 200 heel slides, do 200 straight leg raises. I don't remember all the exercises, but as a PT, I would have been doing that stuff, but I was like, wow, 200, that's a lot. But it worked. And then he said the next day after the surgery, he's like, get on your bike, no resistance. So 3 times for 5 minutes the next day, I got on my bike, no resistance. So I was really early into the rehab, and I think not only having a really successful surgery, but having a really specific rehab protocol really helped. Okay, so this is training for Worlds now. I'm recovered from the surgery. So what I want to say is, and this is important for all your athletes and all your rehab professionals know this, but once I was cleared to strength train after that surgery, that was the mainstay of my training. So I was 3 days a week in the gym doing my rehab exercises. So if I was spending my training minutes, I would spend them on rehab first, where a lot of your athletes, they want to make their logbook happy. And they're like, oh, if I have an hour to train, I'm going to spend an hour doing aerobic exercise. And they don't make time for a dynamic warm-up, strength training, and all that recovery stuff that they really need to be doing. So the way I went about my training was, well, Dr. Peifel and I had a kind of a negotiation that went something like this. Well, Lauren, you have a grade 4 arthritis spot in your knee at 30 degrees of flexion. You should really, really limit your impacts on the run. And so, like an athlete, I want to go negotiate back. And I said, well, how about 3 runs a week, 3 to 4 miles? And he's like, that's a lot of repetitions. So I went about, how can I win a world championship? Because, I still wanted to win. With those restrictions. So I was really creative how I trained. So like this picture up here is a friend group of mine. What we would do is I got a bike rack, and we would do a 3 or 4 mile bike repeat, and then we'd get off and we'd run a half mile or a mile hard, and we'd do 3 or 4 of those. So I'd only end up running 2-3 miles maybe, but it was at race pace, all warmed up from biking, instead of wasting miles warming up and cool down biking. I do the same thing swimming. I'm lucky I live across the street from a teeny little lake, no boats. So I would get in and I'd swim 500 yards, and then I'd get out and I'd run a lap of the lake, which is a soft limestone path, a little less than a mile, and I'd do 3 or 4 of those. So I would run 3 or 4 miles, but I wouldn't just go out and pound the pavement. Everything was super specific. And then the other thing I did, because we were going to ride on the left side of the road in Australia, is when the neighborhood was quiet, I'd go in this neighborhood and I'd do 1 mile circuits backwards in the neighborhood, lots of U-turns, lots of corners, everything backwards so it felt normal. So I did all these ways to prepare that didn't involve trashing my body. So things were going good until they weren't. right? And so I was running, and it was May, end of May, and I was like, finally felt like my gait was normal after the surgery, and I was just like running, thinking about how great I felt, and then the next thing I knew, I was on the ground. I was like, that big rock that took me down, it must have been huge. Well, I went back and looked for it. It was like this teeny little decorative paving rock that took me down. Well, I ended up with a 2nd-degree sprain with an avulsion fracture. I put myself in a boot within about 4 hours. Went 9 days in the boot, no change. I was like, I have an avulsion fracture, I know it. Oh no. So I got in to see Dr. Goulsdorf, and I'm a little intense, can you tell? I think I scared him. Is he here? I was in his office tonight. He comes in, and I said, hi, I'm Lauren. I think I have an avulsion fracture. Can we rule that out? And he's like, whoa, okay, I'll send you the x-ray. So I go to x-ray, I come back. He comes back in, sure enough, avulsion fracture. So I'm like, oh, here it comes. He's going to tell me not to run for 6 or 8 more weeks. And he says, oh, you'll be running in 3 weeks. And I was like, 3 more weeks? That's it? And I go, all right! And I think I scared him again. He's like, okay, bye. But anyway, I have Shannon up here too, because she's an amazing athletic trainer that you employ, and she really helped me, guided me in my rehab. So even though I'm a PT, nobody's objective about themselves, right? So she helped me come back. So lots of rehab. I started a foam rolling class just because I needed it too. So, but anyway, flash forward, make it to Australia. Now I want to point out, this is my husband Dan. So you can see he's a future double knee replacement there. So we're quite the team. We're the knee buddies. We go to bed with ice on our knees. I don't do that anymore. But anyway, this was kind of fun. We were chillaxing 2 days before the race, feeding kangaroos. Pretty cool. It's probably like deer over there, though. You know how we're like, oh, I saw another deer. Dang it, I almost hit the deer with my car. They have like, this field we saw had like 300 kangaroos in it, and they had to fence them in so they wouldn't run across the highway. We're like, cool, kangaroos. And everyone there was like, get off the road, right? So, okay, flash forward to the race, because I don't want to run out of time here. Race day was just exciting. I woke up that morning, and it was like one of those rare days I was like, I feel awesome. This is my race to lose. So my idea was to race from the front, because I knew my run was going to be a little compromised from my lack of miles, basically. So take off on the swim. I wanted to lead, but there was this just amazing Canadian. She was just off the front. But then I pulled the next pack. So I was second out of the water. But en route, it was a 750-meter swim. We get like 500 meters in. And I had done the swim preview the day before, but they had moved the buoys, and it was hard to see in the sun. So around 500, I come up, and I'm looking for the buoy, and finally I'm like, there it is. And I start swimming towards it, and I'm pulling like 6 or 7 people behind me. And I get another 75 meters, and all of a sudden I see someone on a paddleboard going. And I was like, oh, fire truck. I went the wrong way. So I ended up swimming like the 2 sides of the triangle instead of the hypotenuse. So I was like, okay, put it out of your mind. So I come up out of the water. My husband's Dan is awesome. He was strategically placed. So I come out. We had color-coded caps. He's like, you're in second, but you're a minute back. I'm like, ooh, a minute, that's a lot. So get on the bike. It was a draft legal bike. So you could race, you could be on someone's wheel. But I didn't want to be on someone's wheel because Dr. Pennington told me back in 2010, he said, you can ride your bike, but you cannot crash again because I can't fix you. So my plan was to ride solo. So there were 9 corners in the first half mile of the race. So I went and in the days leading up to the race, I rode it a bunch of times, and I memorized it. I knew all the corners. I knew what the lines to take. So by the time I got out of there, I had dropped everyone that had tailed me on the swim, and got out on the course. Did end up actually working with a woman from Canada from another age group who was a very steady rider, and I didn't feel like vulnerable riding with her, and that really worked to my advantage. I did not know it, but I passed the woman who was a minute ahead on the swim about halfway through the bike. You don't really know where you are. So anyway, I get off the bike, I'm coming through a transition, and my husband, again, strategically placed. I'm running, and he's like 3 feet from me. He leans over the fencing. There's thousands of people, and he's like, you're in the lead. And I didn't know I'd passed the woman, and I swear, I almost came to a stop. I go, really? And he goes, go! because I was just standing there looking at them. So on that run, I ran scared because I was just like, okay, I know this is my weak point, and I was running scared. It was a double, like, out and back loop. My mind started playing tricks on me. I'm like, oh, is she in my age group? Is she in my age group? It was too funny. But see that smile right there? That picture right there, they have like a timing mat that's fake. It's not the finish line. They pick up your name. So that picture is right after I realized I was going to win, because they had just announced, here comes our world champion in the 50 to 54-year-old age group, Lauren Jensen McGinnis. So I smiled, I raised up my flag, and I crossed the line in tears. So this is the top 3 men and women in the 50 to 54 age group. Australia was second and New Zealand was third. And here's us celebrating with ice cream for breakfast. I'm allergic to milk. Mine was almond ice cream. But, you know, you got to celebrate. You work hard, and then you got to play hard, right? You got to celebrate. So, I mean, some of you are like, that's not playing hard. Where's your umbrella drink, right? So, okay. So I just want to quickly go through a few points. And I tried to make them with my story. But I could not have done this, obviously, without such an amazing partnership with the Mosh. So just a few quick things. If you really want to partner with your athletes, you want to learn what their expectations are. And trust me, they're very different than what your expectations are. So ask a lot of questions and really find out where they're coming from. Put them in control of the rehab. So you know their question's always like, when can I do X? You know, mine is like, when can I run? So if you say, oh, you can run in 4 weeks, I guarantee you as a coach, this is what I see them doing. They're testing it every freaking day, which is only setting them back. But if you make a win-then statement, when you can hop on that foot 10 times without pain, you can start a walk-run program. That puts them in control because they know, oh, I'm nowhere near hopping, and they're not going to be out there testing it every day. Create an atmosphere of openness and honesty. That can be hard to do. There's a lot of people that are closet trainers because they know they're doing way too much. But nowadays, most people track things. So, you know, especially if you're a rehab professional that can spend 30 minutes with them, maybe you'd say, hey, can I look at your logbook and see if I can find anything to help you not get injured? And then you'll see what they're really doing. Work towards buy-in and avoid the absolutes. It's really hard for an athlete when you say, don't do this, don't do that. Give them something to do. So I think one reason my knee rehab works so well is because Dr. Pfeiffer was like, day 1, you're doing these exercises. Day 2, you're on your bike. Day 3, you're doing this. So instead of dwelling on what I couldn't do, I was put in control of what I could do. Define a clear path between surgery, rehab, and return to play. I think a lot of times this goes well up to the point where we get between rehab and return to play. And that's where I think it behooves you to talk to the athlete's coach. Actually make that call and help connect the dot for the athlete of what your idea of return to play is. Communicate any concerns with energy balances. I did want to make the point, now, when you're 5'2", you eat at the kids' table. Actually, Cheryl, my friend's 5'0", but 5 feet. But a lot of the athletes, I mean, there's a few athletes that overeat. It's hard on their joints. You know, they're not going to excel. A lot of the athletes, they undereat. And I wanted to make the point that when I was recovering from the accident, I don't count calories, so I'm not positive. But when I was training for Ironman, I was probably eating 4,000 calories a day. When I was sitting in my recliner, and the only commute I had was from the recliner to the bathroom a few times a day, or several times a day, I was eating 3,000 calories a day to recover, and I did not gain weight. So a lot of your athletes would be like, oh, I'm hurt, I can't train, I'm gonna restrict calories. You gotta educate them they have to fuel that healing. The body needs so many calories to heal. Likewise, sleep and recovery. A lot of your athletes are giving up sleep to fit in their workouts. This is our Team Try Faster doing a Shavasana after a race earlier this year. But really emphasize the rest and recovery. Training's like a sponge. It's what your body can absorb, not how much you do. Okay, this is me on my 50th birthday. Again, where's the umbrella drink? No, my friend Kristen and I are doing something weird, I don't know. But teach that strength training, prehab, and rehab are a lifestyle. If your athletes are over 35, they need to be strength training. Really, everyone needs to be strength training. But prehab, so you don't rehab. And then utilize a team of professionals. Obviously, you guys have a great team. Make sure that you're not in an island and you're reaching out and working with other professionals, including the athletes' coaches. I don't have time to talk about what I did earlier this year, but I broke my elbow and I saw Dr. Asfari for that. So clearly I have trouble staying upright. So if something else happens, I think you should send me for some kind of vestibular assessment. So, all right, so this picture is a little bit of a test. So Dan is an engineer, he's a mechanical engineer, and it's kind of hard to see, but because of all the things that have happened to me, this is how I think we can help athletes stay healthy. So I'm test marketing this new uniform, so that's a helmet. I think that Harley Davidson could supply that, right? And then it's hard to see here, but that's bubble wrap. Right? So like I'm complete, but still the TriFaster and the Mosh logos still show. So I was thinking you guys are a leader in the industry here. Maybe you could also be a leader in the next uniform design. But all joking aside, I feel like if you really work hard to truly partner with your athletes, you know, gone are the days, people are looking up all this stuff on the internet. They're very self-educated compared to how they used to be. It's not like the doctors, the PAs, the rehab professionals are looked at a little differently than they used to be. And I feel like the best way to have the best outcomes with the athletes is to become true partners with them. And I think if we do that, we can all get, oops, the fairy tale ending that we all want. So thank you for having me today, and thank you for the world-class care. My team and myself wouldn't have had the results without all of you.